Present.
McCracken?
Present.
Paris? Absent. Vice Chair Little? Absent. Chairman Mercy?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Anna, would you like to lead our Pledge of Allegiance?
Good morning, everyone. Please place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey. We have a presentation this morning from the Lancaster Police Department.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we do. I have my special investigator, Mike Katz, and he's going to do a presentation on cannabis, elderly care, and smoke shops. So take it away, Mike.
Good morning. My name is Mike Katz. I work for the Lancaster Police Department. I'll just give you an overview of some of the things we're seeing in the community. And like Chief just said, care homes, grow houses, and smoke shops. I'll start with unlicensed care homes. Our entry into this was an issue that wasn't even on the radar until it became an issue on the radar. And we're attacking kind of the root cause. This is a source of extreme calls for service to the fire department and the sheriff's department. They're using the fire department as their primary health care provider. And so that's a major public safety issue. It fills up the emergency room. It takes up ambulances. And these places are unlicensed. So we started looking at that, but what we started seeing was kind of a mix of criminal activity that went beyond just not having a license. So we're seeing varying degrees of neglect. We're seeing homeless patients that are disabled who are being shipped here from across the state. We're seeing patients' identity documents being confiscated when they arrive. Cell phones being confiscated. They're separated from their family. We've been seeing patients getting medicated with sedative medications that are not prescribed to them to make them more placid. We had one patient whose clothes was confiscated to discourage him from leaving. And what they're doing is they're enrolling these patients in these very generous benefits programs, IHSS and Medicaid. There's participating pharmacies down below in the industry area that they'll enroll them. They'll get prescriptions for everything you can imagine, vitamins and stuff that you could otherwise buy off the shelf, and there's participating physicians. It's kind of a ring. So when we find these places, now that we know what to look for, we'll bring the state inspectors with us and try and get them shut down and get those patients put in the proper licensed facilities. Some of the challenges we're having with this, though, is that the state agencies that regulate this, they don't have a physical presence in Antelope Valley. It's hard to get them to come up here. Those state regulatory agencies are not really wired and configured to do kind of these crossover issues with elder abuse and neglect. And we're not getting not everybody's walking in unison with each other, law enforcement and these regulatory agencies. So we've been working on trying to get everybody on the same page. Some of the healthcare agencies, healthcare providers that are participating in this are hiding behind HIPAA. And that's not really a proper use of HIPAA, but it's hard to pierce that information to put these investigations together. So that's what the care homes. Grow houses, last 4 years, I've been doing grow houses, kind of my primary thing. For whatever reason, organized crime has selected Antelope Valley. Our proximity to LA. They have straw buyers purchasing houses, usually cash, and they'll convert the entire house to a grow. So it's not like 6 plants, it's like 600 to 1,200 plants per house. The entire house gets converted. They'll fumigate pesticides inside the house, pesticides that are banned in North America, pesticides that are persistent for 15 years, and they'll get into the drywall, get into the HVAC system. Pesticides that cause endocrine disorders, pesticides that cause nerve agent disorders, and that's all being fumigated inside the house. One single family dwelling can produce $1 to $3 million per year in cannabis. They're not paying taxes, they're stealing electricity. And so what we're doing, our focus is protecting the city's housing stock. It's protecting the future families that are going to live in these houses. And it's identifying members of the ring and trying to dismantle and disrupt what they're doing. A grow house is 24 times more likely to catch fire than a non-grow house. So this is a significant public safety issue. If you look at the photo there on the top that shows the typical humidity inside a grow house is 72%. The cannabis likes high humidity and it produces humidity. A house is not designed for that kind of humidity, and we're talking like 2 years sustained.
Clarify, Mike, the 24 times more likely, that's not just while it's a grow house, that's,
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
and why?
So the electrical wiring in a grow house gets tampered with by amateur people. It's also degraded because it has excessive draw, more than it's rated to deliver. And then finally, there's a corrosive environment that wiring is not even designed for. The humidity, and also there's corrosive agricultural chemicals that are being used. And in the bottom photo right there is a sulfur burner. They'll burn sulfur as a pest control measure. When that sulfur hits that humidity, though, it turns into sulfuric acid and it coats everything. Sulfuric acid has a high affinity for copper. The electrical wiring is copper, so it gets degraded. So that danger persists long after the marijuana grow is over. What we're seeing is that these growing groups will patch up the house and make cosmetic repairs, and they'll sell the house to unsuspecting innocent family. They haven't properly fixed it unless we know about it and we intervene. We spend a lot of effort trying to get these houses up to code before they return to the housing market.
Real quick, but how they stealing electricity?
They go, there's a service riser typically in the garage for underground service, comes up. They'll cut a hole in the drywall. They'll cut a hole in the pipe that comes up from the ground. And they have clamps that they purchase, and they'll clamp into it, and they'll power the whole grow off of that.
So they are bypassing the meters.
They're not paying for $400,000 worth of electricity every 6 months.
Isn't it the electric company like Edison? Do they know? Because they
I think
keep track
Edison,
of it, you know?
I think Edison knows where all the grows are, but Edison has a policy, and there's some state law issues too, that Edison's not allowed to share that information with us. So when Edison finds these places on their own, they'll typically turn the electricity off, but they don't tell us about it. So that's a silo that, we have to work on. We rely primarily on neighbors telling us that there's suspicious activity that's consistent with a grow.
Is there any way, when you find one of these grow houses and once it's, the people are arrested and it's empty, is there a way for us to try to create some kind of ordinance that allows us to make sure that the prospective listing agent and the prospective buyer know what's involved and that it's corrected before we have families moving in? Because, a situation like this, I'd hate to see a family buy a $500,000 house, they have it less than a year, and now all of a sudden they have $200,000 worth of repairs because we didn't notify them in advance of the damage that was done to the home.
A couple of things. One thing is existing ordinance now does allow us to record to cloud title with a substandard. And so what we do with whoever owns the property at the time of the grow, we issue them a notice. They have 30 days to fix everything, or we're going to cloud title. And after that 30 days ripens, we do cloud title with that substandard. A copy of our notice of violation that describes everything gets recorded with the county recorder.
Okay.
So I think also, I'm not an expert on real estate, but I think the realtors, when they see that, have an obligation to disclose that to buyers.
Absolutely.
Our biggest issue, though, is finding these houses, because we know that there's some that are slipping through the cracks that we don't get a chance to get inside and do our thing. And then there's another issue where there's grow houses we know is a grow house, but we didn't get there in sufficient time to do our investigation. So we're behind the ball. We really don't know what to tell them what to fix because we didn't get there early enough. And that happens sometimes too. They're dumping corrosives into the city sewer. They're destroying the plumbing system of the house.
What are the signs neighbors should be looking for?
Neighbors should look for a house that's unusually quiet, that has unusual lack of activity, excessive security. So the typical thing would be, this is the story here from the neighbors. The Williams family sold their house and moved away. The new buyer came in. They did a bunch of remodeling, but they never really moved in. And there's somebody there at night for a couple of hours, and then they leave, and the lawn's not really maintained, and they're very quiet neighbors. That's what I hear. That's the pattern. That's pretty typical. And then about every 2.5, 3 months, a van or a truck pulls in the driveway, backs right up to the garage, so close you can't even barely see a little air gap, and they're there for 4 hours, and then the van leaves, and that's harvest time. So you can do a harvest every 2.5 to every 3 months.
Mike, you, and he's pointed out to me before as well that these houses, many of them will have multiple AC units
Oh, yeah.
outside.
The lights generate a lot of heat, and cannabis actually likes to grow about 65 to 75 degrees, so they actually will install a bunch of air conditioners to bring the temperature down. So if there's air conditioners running, when it's 50 degrees outside and opening a window would do, that's an indicator. They have a bunch of AC condensers outside, although sometimes they put the air conditioning condensers inside the house too. But unusual humming noise. But I think the biggest one is unusual lack of activity. That's kind of a dead ringer.
Is the Antelope Valley specifically targeted, meaning that do other cities have the same problem, or do we know? Is this rampant throughout Southern California, or it is just the high desert?
It's cities that are similar to Lancaster, Palmdale. So Palmdale's getting hit hard, Lancaster's getting hit hard. Ontario, Chino Hills are getting hard. It's kind of the suburbs where the housing prices are a little bit less than the Los Angeles basin, but the driving time is still reasonable to the Los Angeles basin where the demand is highest. We're a transportation hub up here, and so our illegal weed travels.
How many known homes are we dealing with in the valley so far?
It's hard to say. We have, I think, about 50 open cases right now where we're working on remediation with the property owner. I estimate about 50. But it's hard to say how many exist because of the clandestine nature of what they're doing. And I could tell you Edison knows probably where every single one of them is. If we could get access to that, then we could shut the illicit market down in about a month. These houses, a grow house will have mold. Sometimes it's visible, sometimes it's not, but grow houses have massive amounts of mold. And this house on the left, they had trafficking victims who were doing all the work, and that's the room that the victim was in. But when we start pulling drywall off, we start lifting up carpeting, carpet padding, we find mold everywhere. It's that humidity. House is not designed for 75% humidity for 2 years. We talked about the pesticides. These pesticides that we're finding are not allowed. They've been banned since the 1980s worldwide. We find electrical and structural hazards. We talked about electrical a little bit. What they'll do with this is that they'll just put drywall over that if we don't intervene. They'll patch that up and they'll sell it to some innocent victims, not knowing that there's compromised structural framing, that the electrical's hazardous.
Are we seeing any increase in fires due to those?
Yes, there have been grow house fires, and those houses then they just sit because it gets even more complicated to fix it, and those people just tend to walk away from the house and let the bank. If it's foreclosure, they just let it foreclose. If it's not, we have a few houses that are just sitting right now.
And
So
then are you finding that some of these houses are also the vacant houses afterwards that they're taking over?
Yeah, so there was a particular grow house up near Avenue H that squatters moved into it and made it their house for when, it just complicates the issue. We really want to get into these grow houses as fast as possible and start our intervention. Because again, it's about protecting the next family that's going to live in the house and preserving the city's housing stock.
So they're able to eliminate all smell?
Yeah, they button these houses up super well. A house has vapor barriers already. When it gets constructed, there's plastic all on the exterior walls. And then they'll button everything up even tighter. And they'll use charcoal filters. So they'd have to exhaust, the plants are producing excess oxygen that they have to get out of the house, but they'll put it through filters first. They'll use ozone generators as well to kill the odor. So typically, it's not unusual that there be no odor. When there's an odor, that's another dead ringer, but we've hit plenty of grow houses where there was no odor, and the neighbors had no idea. These are very sophisticated operations. These are not hippies. This is organized crime. We've been dealing with people who've done prison time in foreign prisons. They're very tough people, and they're highly organized. I hit all these topics already, but we're working on an ordinance right now, a remediation ordinance that'll spell out kind of some timelines on how we want people to fix these houses up a little faster so we can return them to the housing market, and that there's penalties if they don't do it the proper way. So that's still in draft right now. And I want to talk about smoke shops. We started looking at smoke shops last year. The smoke shops are selling unlicensed cannabis products. So in Lancaster, you need a license to sell a cannabis product. Our smoke shops are selling cannabis products that are in packaging that's designed to be attractive to children. They're using the intellectual property of legit food, which can confuse kids. So when you see on the news, it's a bunch of kids were taken to the hospital because they got in some edible, that's the kind of products that they're getting into. When I looked at that, I thought that was a legit snack, until I looked closely at it, and those are actually infused with cannabis. Again, this is stuff that's really attractive to kids, and that's illegal in California to sell edible cannabis products in a package that's attractive to kids. But that is what we're seeing. And they've stolen the intellectual property for legit food products.
So with our local smoke shops, how are we getting them? Or are they just getting a fine? Are we shutting them down? What's happening if they're selling this kind of stuff that they're not even clearly licensed for?
There's an ordinance in the works right now. It's going to be a lot more aggressive on this issue. We do take there's a confusing regulations right now. This is regulated under the Sherman Food and Cosmetic Act, which the city has no authority over. That's health inspectors, and there's an emergency regulation that the state issued that allows cannabis control and the California Tax Enforcement Agency to go there. So we bring the tax people from the state with us, and they will seize all of this. They'll take it right off the shelf. That's what we're doing right now, but we're working on some local legislation that'll allow us to be more involved in that.
When they catch counterfeit tobacco tax stamps, a retailer, it's like 3 strikes, you're out, they lose their license. I don't know if it's the same with a cannabis license.
You know, I don't know the state taxing agencies. Yeah, I don't know, but we'll bring them. We'll nominate locations that we want them to go to, and we'll go with them to these places. But they're kind of the biggest hammer that we bring right now until we get some legislation. They also sell the butane. This butane is for making honey oil. So they take all the cannabis plants, they put it in a pipe, they run the butane through it. It comes out in a liquid form on the other end. It's very concentrated cannabis, like 90% THC. One of the other things I wanted to talk about too is psychoactive hemp, and I don't have a slide for that. This is a loophole. Psychoactive hemp, there's about 120 cannabinoid substances in the cannabis plant. Delta-9 THC is the only one that's regulated. But the plant produces 119 other other cannabinoid substances. So Delta-8 THC, Delta-10 THC is still intoxicating, but it's not regulated under state law. They did some emergency regulations a couple months ago to include it under the Food Act, but the cities don't have a path into that right now. They just label it, we're just selling hemp. But it's just as, there's no quality control on how it's grown, how it's manufactured. There's no oversight at all. And it has just the same hazards as Delta-9 THC. And that's being sold, it's called gas station weed or diet weed. So that's an issue. We might adopt the state's definition of cannabis into our ordinance so that we expand it to include these other cannabinoid substances.
Yeah, I think that they selling those, definitely there is a market for those, because they're trying to make money off of it. And instead of doing this, I know you guys have hands tied up, maybe we can bring the issue with the city council members, and there's some budget for educating citizens. That way, they don't go over there, especially for the, kids, teenagers, That way, they don't go over there, buy the product. If there is no use for it, they're not going to bring this. Right?
Yeah, demand reduction would really solve the whole. So if people knew, well, I always say this: if people knew how cannabis was grown, they wouldn't go near it with the heavy metals and the pesticides. And the joke I tell is that cannabis is like a hot dog. And once you know how hot dogs are made, you don't want to eat hot dogs anymore. and cannabis is kind of the same thing. There's pesticides that have been banned by the UN since the 80s. The heavy metals. There's a bunch of medical studies that show that it causes major health effects years down the line. So the other stuff we're seeing inside the smoke shops is just drug paraphernalia for all the other stuff. We're finding weapons, brass knuckles, switchblade knives, fighting knives. Stuff. There's not really a lot of legitimate products being sold in these smoke shops. And nitrous oxide. And when I asked the store operator at this particular store, by the way, every photo I've shown you today is taken in Lancaster. He says that it's for making cake, and a smoke shop is not a food establishment, and it's not for making cake. But they've concealed it. They're hiding behind, as if they're a legit business. So I did want to just present. This is a snapshot of the kind of stuff that we're dealing with right now, and bring this to your attention. Like I said, it would be nice if we could expand the definition of cannabis in the city ordinance to include other cannabinoids beyond just Delta-9 THC. The California Attorney General's office has a prosecutor program where the cities sign a MOU delegating the city's enforcement power to the California Attorney General, and they will be free, we don't pay anything, get a Deputy Attorney General to assist us with enforcing our municipal code on these kind of establishments that are doing this and get them shut down. I'd like to see an ordinance that declares unlicensed cannabis a public nuisance subject to seizure. We get an appeal period. After that appeal period has ripened, the product gets destroyed. And I'd like to also send in, police explorers to go do undercover buys and see if they're selling the kids.
So these ordinance that you want to recommend for the city to adopt, have any steps been made to work with the city with that yet?
We actually have a meeting today.
Okay.
strengthening our ordinances related to smoke shops
Okay,
at 1 o'clock.
all right. So we'll have an update next
so-
meeting.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, so we are definitely on that. Mike's a big part of that,
Great.
and I'll tell you right now, I wish I could say I brought him here, but I inherited him, and I'll tell you, the man is absolutely, as you can probably tell from his presentation, he's an expert on this stuff. So we've got a good warrior to work alongside us in trying to address these issues.
Yeah, and I would like to think when, probably at the beginning of the year, when we have the legislative groups here, that this could be brought up to them, especially if you have an entity such as Edison knowing exactly where these homes are. I mean, it's a public health issue that we're dealing with.
It's that, and there's not enough electricity in the state of California to supply all these grow houses. It's a public safety issue that they catch fire. It's a environment, the carbon footprint of a grow house. One grow house has a carbon footprint of 30 non-grow houses. There's not, the brownouts that are occurring across California, there's not enough power for this. So there's multiple reasons, legitimate public interest reasons to go shut these places down.
Well, and I know in the last few years, being in real estate, we've seen quite a few homes sell that had solar. And I had a home for sale in Roseman, and the people just walked in, looked at the panel, and said it'll work, and walked away and made an offer. Fortunately, the sellers didn't want that person near their neighbors who they cared about. But I know a lot of times that's what's happening. They go and they look at the solar panels, and they're off and running.
So, yeah, realtors representing sellers an indicator may be unusual interest in the electrical system, unusual interest in privacy, and unusual lack of interest that a normal buyer would care about. And the realtors get a good sense of what sticks out after so much time. And that is an indicator.
Commissioner Harris, I actually have a question for you out of this. Do you think it'd be a benefit for us to do such presentation to the real estate associations that we have here in the Valley?
I absolutely do. However, I will tell you, it won't touch the agents that come from the San Fernando Valley. They are bringing the buyers up here. What it could do is if you could educate the listing agents here in the Antelope Valley what to look for when a buyer looks at a home and what to look for when the agent is presenting the offer, which would probably be more doable if the listing agent was there when they showed the home and they could see. That would be helpful. But I definitely think it's worth your time to go ahead to the Board of Realtors and make a presentation.
Okay, we'll look into that, absolutely.
Do the smoke shops require a conditional use permit?
They need a tobacco retailer, whether it's a smoke shop or it's the Chevron gas station. Any tobacco retailer needs a regulatory license from the city. And that's being, right now, as I understand, modified.
Okay.
So I
So
don't
where
know
if they
what,
violate they have these illegal products, they could lose their.
I don't know the features, I don't know what it's gonna look like in the end, but I know it's being worked on with the intent of tightening and making it more strict. So hopefully it'll have those features.
I'm a little confused, and it seems to me our approach to this is a little schizophrenic. Since 2016, it's been legal to consume and possess marijuana. It's not legal to consume and possess heroin, for example. So we've enabled or opened the door to use and consumption, but we've kept the door closed to production. And as all of the stuff that you're talking about are people trying to find a way to meet public demand, consumption demand, but their hands are tied, and so they've got to do it in some way that makes it even more dangerous than it would be if it were totally above board.
Well, so Prop 64 does allow, and there is a path for licensed cultivation. There is, please get a license. Do it in a commercial building that's designed to be a greenhouse. But with that license path comes a very heavy regulation burdens and taxes. And what these groups are doing is that they're evading all those costs of doing business. And in a sense, they're unfairly competing with the cannabis industry that has went and made the effort to get a license. That industry exists, but they're suffocating because of competition, unfair competition with the unlicensed market. But there is a path to get a license. But these are crooks, and they've just decided to forego the license process, to forego the regulation.
As Mike explained, there is a process in California. California is very open to having legal grows. There's a process through the state to be able to do that, to get licensed, there's even a support mechanism to help support the success of that business. So it's easy to do. These, as Mike indicated, these are criminal enterprises who want to circumvent all those regulations. They want to circumvent the taxes, and it's a black market is what it is. Largely connected to cartels. It's a money path, and that's their only driver. They don't care about the health of anybody. They don't care about the safety of anybody. It's just to get money. And California has an easy path to get there legally. They're intentionally avoiding that path.
I'm still puzzled. There's not, for example, a black market, or maybe there is and I don't know about it, for automobiles or shirts. In other words, why is there a black market for marijuana? It's in and of itself.
Well, arguably
it must
there is.
be that the regulatory restrictions are onerous enough that it's economically feasible to take the risk of dodging them.
Right. So there is a black market for sure. It's just not super lucrative, I don't think. But there is. You see those at swap meets and everything else. It's not. Nike's not selling their shirts there. These are knockoffs. You see them online. That's actually a pretty big industry. But for cars are pretty recognizable. So if we saw a fake Mercedes, it'd be kind of obvious. The numbers wouldn't line up. The plates, the VIN wouldn't line up. There'd be other indicators. We'd see that. With marijuana, how do you know? How do you know? And so it can hide really, really easily.
So what you're saying is there's a good possibility that the illegal grows are selling to licensed marijuana shops.
We know that's happening.
That is absolutely happening.
So that's what's driving it.
Yeah, there's an injection of the black market grow into the legitimate market through bad distributors.
There's also, California weed is making its way across the country, and there's even reports it's going into other countries. California marijuana has a reputation kind of like Napa wine, and it's very lucrative.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same with cannabis, but like for instance with tobacco, there's a lot of counterfeit tobacco tax stamp fraud and organized crime, and they'll we've talked to when I was with the State Board of Equalization, we talked to gas stations and tobacco shops. They say it's like a protection racket. Van comes up and said, you're gonna buy X number of these, just mix them in with your legitimate tobacco products, and or bad things can happen. So this, I don't know if that's similar or if they're in collusion.
Very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks. Sure. Any other questions?
No, thank you for your presentation. It was depressing, but thank you.
Thank you.
Well, definitely, I'm glad we have Anna Zarley here with Assemblymember Lackey's office, but I think particularly in easing some of those regulatory burdens with Edison and the unlicensed care homes. Definitely should be talking with them and Mr. Carrillo's office and our new Senator Suzette Valladares. Okay. Moving on, we have our consent calendar, which just consists of the minutes from last month. Does anyone have any objections to adopting the consent calendar as presented?
No, motion to approve.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll, I guess, vote with our machines. Okay, motion carries. Next up, we have our reports, LA Sheriff's.
Good morning, Commission. I'm Deputy Kit Groupie, Lancaster Sheriff Station. I'll be presenting the crime stats for October of 2024. We're going to start with at the top. If you look to the right, 2024 year-to-date reported, and then I'll give you the percentage of the 1 year and change year-to-date from 23 to 24. We'll start with criminal homicide. In the city of Lancaster for October, reported 20 in the city and 2 in the unincorporated area for a total of 22, which would be a decrease at 18.52% from the total incidents in October of 2023. Next, we'll go down to forcible rape with a total of 58 in the city, 14 in the unincorporated area for a total of 72. And if we go back up to the city section, it would be a decrease of 10.77%. However, in the unincorporated area, it would be an increase of 55.56% and an overall average of a 2.70% decrease. Robberies in the city of Lancaster are at 228, with 27 being in the unincorporated areas for a total of 255. In the city, that is a 17.99% decrease. However, in the unincorporated area, it is a 28.57% increase. Overall average for both is a 14.72% decrease in robberies. Excuse me. Aggravated assaults are at 823, with 104 being in the unincorporated areas for a total of 927. At a decrease in the city of 0.96%, with an increase of 4% in the unincorporated area for a total average decrease of 0.43%. We'll go down to burglaries in the city of Lancaster for a total of 536, with 103 being in an unincorporated area for a total of 639, with a decrease in the city of 5.47%, unincorporated area of decrease of 14.88%, for a total average of decreased 7.12%. Larceny thefts in the city of Lancaster are at 947, with 152 being in the unincorporated area for a total of 1,099, which in the city is a decrease of 2.17%, and an increase in the unincorporated areas at 14.29%, and a total overall average decrease of 0.18%. Grand theft autos, we have talked about that. It is obviously an issue here in Lancaster and other areas within LA County. With that being said, in the city we had 1,105 and 320 in the unincorporated area for a total of 1,425, which is an increase in the city at 22.64%, unincorporated area 58.42%, with an overall increase of 29.19%. Arsons are at 41 in the city of Lancaster, 23 in the unincorporated area, for a total of 64 overall, with an increase in the city of Lancaster at 28.13%, and an increase in the unincorporated area at 91.67%, for an overall increase at 45.45%. Part 1 crimes total are at 3,758 in the city, 745 in the unincorporated area, 4,503 total, with an overall increase of 5.53%. Excuse me, I'm going to move to the arrests. In October of 2023. Previous 12 months, we were at 318 arrests for the month of October. October of 2024, we're at 321 arrests. We're going to have our City of Lancaster Part 1 crime hotspot areas there. And then generally speaking, the actual crimes and then calls for service pretty much match very closely in the real orange dense areas as to the calls for service of us responding to those Part 1 crimes. And I want to thank my crime analyst. He usually watches this as we're doing it, Alan. He added this slide for the City of Lancaster traffic data now. For October of 2024, total of crashes or traffic collisions that were fatal is 2. Total of injury traffic collisions is 60. A total of traffic collisions non-injury, excuse me, is 58. Number of citations issued 189, and there was a total of 36 DUI arrests. That concludes my crime statistic presentation for October of 2024. Did anyone have any questions for me?
Yes, I had a couple questions. Are the vehicles that are being stolen, what is the percentage of new versus used, just out of curiosity's sake?
I don't have the percentage offhand. However, I do know that it's mid-2000 Chevrolet products that are really getting stolen a lot. Chevy Silverados, Chevy Suburbans, Tahoes, ones that are very similar dash and the key functions to start the vehicle in those years are being stolen outrageously.
Is the catalytic converter still a major issue?
I don't know that I think part of the auto theft are those catalytic converters being taken off of the vehicles during the course of them being stolen. So I don't think excessively, I think it's made up in the difference of those catalytic converters are being stolen off the vehicles that are being stolen, but not necessarily as much as we saw previously for just the catalytic converters being taken off the vehicles who are parked in driveways. They're stealing the car overall now.
Okay, last question. Do we have any idea why grand theft, arson, and Part 1 are up so much as opposed to everything else we're kind of keeping track of and we have a little bit of control over it? And those were the only ones that were just consistently up.
I don't have that exact answer. I can find out for you and either present it at the next meeting or get that information shortly and re-present it for you. When you have, let's go back. When you go back to the actual incidents and then you compare them from last year. So for instance, let's go to arson and you have, I mean, that 11 difference, right? 32. If you have 10 separate and you only had 14 from the year prior, that increases obviously your percentages greatly. I don't have an exact answer, but I can find out what the specific incidents were that made those go up.
Right, it just caught my eye just because they were consistently higher.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I
I'll
appreciate
reach out to my crime analyst and see if we can't research what those specific incidents are, and then I can get back to you with a good, solid answer.
Kind of going back on the grand theft auto, what has been the success rate of recovering these these stolen units, especially with the cameras that are in place?
I mean, when you refer to the camera, you're talking about like flock cameras?
Yeah, correct.
A lot of these vehicles are recovered and found days later. Like I said, I don't have a specific answer, but they'll be used either in the commission of a crime or the parts that were sought after have been taken off of these vehicles. Some have been just left running in the street to get from point A to point B. I don't have an exact number, and I can find out of the success rate for the recoveries of the vehicles. We're still out actively utilizing the tools that the city has given us, and it's a great tool to help stop people who are actively driving stolen vehicles and or have stolen the vehicles. However, you know, in recent times, and I think a huge problem with why vehicles are just being stolen like that. Talking to TRAP, our auto theft specific detectives, it's almost faster to steal one of those vehicles than to reach under the car or cut off the cat or take the parts needed. They can be out of there and in a so-called safe zone or out of the area in a more timely manner than actually going under someone's car and causing enough ruckus to, you know, be caught. And then it's a basically it's a citation and a release. So if you're a criminal and you know that, I mean, you're literally not necessarily even being booked into jail for stealing someone's livelihood.
And is the station still offering was it the club you were providing?
Yes, we get those through TRAP, and they got those through a grant. So anytime needed, and we offer those. I actually have them, anyone here today, I have some in my SUV outside that I can give to people, members of the public, to help prevent. Might not stop for sure, but it'll definitely, if an auto thief has 30 seconds to steal a car, and there's a car across the street or that car, and one has the club or not, it's obviously a deterrent, so.
And would that be something the Lancaster PD might be doing as well and offering?
So we probably will, once we get fully up and running. We're actually exploring or beginning to look at other ways where we can have an effect on things like that. And then in kind of the premise of what we plan to do with our officers is find ways to target the areas where these things are happening. So we'll be working closely with the sheriffs, and we'll have the teams that can actually have the time to put efforts into attacking those issues as well as educating the public in those areas of the problem. So.
Okay, thank you.
And our trap guys and auto theft guys are actively out here. There is a team in the North County, and they're actively out here working. And we also have detectives at Lancaster Station assigned specifically to station-level auto theft. Were there any other questions? Okay, thank you. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Highway Patrol.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I ran a check on some stats for the past 2 months, for the month of October and November. And unfortunately, I see that our enforcement activity went down overall for those 2 months. I show close to 14% reduction in overall citation issued from 1,400 to 1,200. So everything else was impacted. Speed violations were down, seat belts, and distracted driving was the only thing that was up. Actually, distracted driving and DUI enforcement were up. Distracted driving up by almost 13%, and DUI up 18% from 120 the previous year to 142 these 2 months for 2024. DUI crashes were up 13%, and total crashes up 20%. We did end the month of November with some strong enforcement activity for the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, which was for 4 days. The outcome of that was 238 citations issued total. 71 were for speed. and 167 for various other violations, from reckless driving to over 100 miles per hour speed, unsafe lane change, distracted driving, total 167. There were 19 vehicles impounded, 13 DUI arrests on that weekend, and 2 fatality crashes. So the maximum enforcement period for Thanksgiving ran from Thursday through Sunday at midnight. And I attribute the reduction in activity for the past 2 months to some loss in personnel due to transfers, injuries, and reassignments. We're working to try to get back up to our normal staffing in the future. And I'll open it up for questions.
Any questions? Very well. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman Mercy, if I may, I want to send congratulations and thanks to Lieutenant Casas, as this is his last week as a highway patrolman. He's officially retiring in a week. So we appreciate your service, brother.
Congratulations. Okay, public safety, Chief, did you have anything more for us?
Just really quickly, briefly. So I just want to pass on a couple quick things. First, last night at council, we strengthened our ordinances regarding juveniles. And so we strengthened our curfew ordinance, as well as our daytime loitering ordinance. And we also passed an ordinance that gives us the ability to get cost recovery when a juvenile violates a crime and is detained. So because sometimes there's significant hours placed into that with the sheriff's department or our officers in detaining and holding on to a juvenile. So, and we also passed an ordinance that gives us the ability to look at, the parenting and whether or not they were being responsible parents with these juveniles when they go out and they violate these problems. This all came about due to the problems that we were having with juveniles kind of putting on these ruckuses where a bunch of them will show up and create issues. And then I want to pass this on, and this is going to be interesting for everybody, but we're starting our work on Sierra Highway with our sex trafficking problem. And we want to get out to the public that, we're going to put some signage out there to let folks know that we have an eye on that area and that we're paying attention to any criminal activity out there. And we're also looking at, we want to educate individuals who are going out there and possibly partaking in what's being, the services that are being offered out there. And so we are looking at identifying vehicles that are seen there, picking up these women, and some form of messaging to get to the registered owners of those vehicles that this is still illegal activity in our town, and that you can be arrested for it. So we want to make sure the public knows that it's an unacceptable activity. So that's something that you're going to see in the near future we're going to be doing.
That's good.
Well, it's going to go to the registered owner's home. So well, we'll see who opens that letter, but it is definitely, we do definitely need to let folks know that it's an illegal activity and it's bringing harm to a lot of folks. So, yeah, that's all I have. Okay.
Okay. Well, And I think you're it for our elected official updates.
I'm it. Good morning, Commissioners. As you know, session really has not started, but Assemblyman wanted me to make sure that I come and just say Merry Christmas to you all, and thank you for your service. But he wants everybody to keep an eye on, he is presenting a new bill this year that is going to be Assembly Bill 38. And this is a new bill that's going to classify the rape of a developmentally disabled minor a violent felony. As of right now, it is not considered a violent felony. And so he wants to make sure, and he's going to press on this. We're hoping that it is going to pass. So he just wants you all to kind of keep an eye on this and the process on this, and we're getting started on that. In January, hopefully, maybe February, we'll have a list of all of his bills coming up. But he just wants to say thank you and Merry Christmas to everyone. And just remember that if you need any help with SCE, we do have a lot of contacts up in Sacramento and our different districts. So we're always open, our office is always open if you want to contact us for any type of help. Anything for me?
Well, just to pass on what the Lancaster Police Department shared on that, if there's a legal reason why Edison can't or isn't sharing that information, that might be something that would be worth looking into.
Yeah, I took some notes. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look into that and see what that, if there's a loophole or what's going on, and get contacts, and then I'll look at and get in touch with y'all.
Great.
Okay? Thank you.
Okay, public business from the floor, non-agendized items.
This is a time to address the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission on non-agendized matters. Speaker cards can be found on the back table of the council chambers. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each unless a different time limit is announced. State law prohibits the commission from taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Paul, come on up.
Chair Mercy and Commissioners, good morning. You know, Commissioner Harris said something, he became depressed after the presentation. That's what happens to me all the time when I come here. But I was depressed when I arrived, and that kind of kicked me out of that into a better mood. So it is Christmas time. It's the best time of the year for me. I love it, and I hope you all do too. You know, I've said up here and through the years a couple of things. There's no greater joy than to love and respect the law. And the caveat is the law must be up to be worthy of that love and respect. And then the other thing is there's no justice in life other than in your own magic. And all that means is the demonstration of mental power. So that's where the loving of the law comes in. Everybody should love and want order. You know, all these things that are intractable issues and ordinances that place more burden that you can't fulfill, all these things, they're frustrating, but they're part of the process. The thing that disturbs me the most in all these discussions is to talk about the foreign criminal gangs that are all over. And I talk to a lot of people, and I know what they say about where they are and what they do, and I don't like that. And I did understand the point of the grows in the house. Of course, there is a solution, but it violates the prime objective, which is to protect the city's housing stock. So there's a couple of things that I've discovered looking around, and there are places that sell the THC-8 in well-regulated facilities that they grow it, but you can't keep up with the demand, and that's, I think, attributable to people's need to escape. And then Dr. Brown talked about the OxyContin, and they got heavy on that. And then it pushes people to fentanyl, and you know, so there's always these unintended consequences. But we're here, we try and do our best, and that's why I love coming here, because a lot of people are oblivious of what it takes to keep order and maintain order. So, you know, I still think about how to conduct, and even getting those Edison to release the information about the electrical use. These are not through proper channel means. So we have to find a way that isn't through proper channels. That's my opinion on that. But then we need to go in there and bust them up, and, you know, you guys all have your hands tied because that's how criminals do it. They take advantage of the restriction of the law that only the law obeys. So it's a mess. But I'm watching shows on pirates and Vikings and all these fights that go on through life. And I tell you, there's no end to it, but we're here fighting. I love all you guys. You're a bunch of badass people that just commit yourselves to doing the right thing. I love that. Merry Christmas to y'all.
Merry Christmas to you, and thank you for being here and participating. Commissioner comments? Dr. Brown? Nope. Okay. Well, with that, we will adjourn at 11:05. If there's no objection, hearing none, we are adjourned.